Who is your least favorite coworker and why? I have a coworker who just loves trying to one-up everyone. If you have a story, he has a similar one, but his is always worse, or better. The worst time this came up was late last year when a friend of mine took his own life. I was at work a few days later and mentioned it to him while trying to explain why I was in a crafty mood and really not looking to put up with other people's crap. And what does he say to me? He says, with a disgusting, smug little look on his face, "I have a friend who tried to hit himself, but I got there in time to save his life. It was like a kick in the gut, and I do not think I will ever forgive him for it." Story 2. Jim. You'd think as a security guard and a retired teacher, he'd have developed some skills that help him handle any situation calmly. Nope. One time this girl was having a seizure at work. Jim started freaking out so badly that it raised the mother of the girl's anxiety so badly that she had a panic attack. Plus, he's just so anal about everything. He absolutely must turn all computer monitors facing away from him because he's afraid of the radiation he will get from it. Yeah, everybody has a Jim story. I hate Jim story 3. The hole that talks to everyone like they are 5 years old and won't let them interject that they are already very well aware of what he is explaining and just wanted a one-sentence answer to a very specific question. No one likes working with him, but he gets to stay on because he has a lot of experience. Story 4. I have a team lead who follows up coaching instructions with whispers that sound almost seductive. Regular voice. Open up the accounting application. You have the bookmark? Open it. Okay. Enter the user. Now click search. Seductive whisper right in my ducking ear. Click search. Searching. Regular voice. Scroll to the bottom and click edit. Now enter the new group you want to add them to. Seductive whisper in my ear again. Search. Enter the group. Yes. Now add it. Add the group. The entire time he's inching closer and closer to my keyboard, desperate to just type for me and do the task himself. It's a mild form of harassment, but it's not me he wants to gently make love to. It's the computer. Story 5. This guy, Nathan. We all do things we aren't really supposed to at work, like be on our phones, browsing Reddit, or maybe take an extra 5 minutes on our break. You know, harmless crap. Every time Nathan saw me do something, he reported it. Duck you, Nathan, you piece of crap. Story 6. This is kind of generic, but as a manager, whoever can't keep their crap together and makes me enforce the rules. Lots of rules exist because if they didn't, a-holes would take advantage and nothing would get done. Many of those same rules can be completely ignored when you've got a team populated with responsible adults who are actually interested in doing a good job. My team is all salaried, and I deliberately do not track when they show up and when they leave. Are they getting their work done? Yes? Good. Do they show up for all the meetings they're supposed to? Yes? Good. Can I usually find them if I need to discuss something, etc.? This only works when nobody's trying to take advantage of it. The moment someone gets it in their head that it means they can work fewer hours and get less stuff done because I'm not paying attention. I'm always paying attention, I just don't always care. Now I have to pay attention and care about annoying things like what time they got to work this morning. Story 7. Constant talker. Every second of every shift is talk. Hum, sing, whistle. No one responds to her and everyone ignores her, but it doesn't stop her gums from flapping. Am I right? Followed by no one answering every single day. Story 8. The one who just shows up, does her job, then goes home. She is married and has a couple dogs, and that's all I know about her, really. Perfect. Story 9. The ones that never learn to use an inside voice. I shouldn't be able to hear everything you say from the moment you walk in on the other side of the building. These are also the same ones that laugh uproariously at everything for no reason. Story 10. I have a coworker who lies to get people in trouble, and over stupid stuff too. Like, for example, I work at a spa. Sometimes people will accidentally send the rocks for hot stone treatments down our laundry chute. And every time he says he pulls the sheets out and shakes them out, not knowing the rock was there, and it hit him. Like he wants them to get in trouble and knows it's not that big of a deal, so he acts like he got hurt because of it. Another example is I accidentally left one of the dryer covers halfway off where it could just fall out and onto the floor. He said as he was walking by, it fell on his foot. Another feigned injury to get someone in trouble for something small. He also takes pictures of small things that we do wrong, like one time there was a square inch-sized piece of paper towel I missed while sweeping, and instead of telling me, he took a picture of it and sent it to the boss. He'll also take pictures of overloaded loads of laundry and send them to the boss. The boss literally told us he doesn't care about all the crap he snitches on us for, but he just keeps him around because he's a really good worker. He also is the rudest person you'll ever meet in your life and tries to boss people around, even though we are pretty much under everyone there. And him and I are on the same level. He acts like he's my boss. I get into it with him every single day. One day I got pulled over on the way to work, but I was really early that day, so I was still 2 minutes early for my shift. He was the only person there when I arrived, and I told everyone throughout the day that I got pulled over. Later, I walked in on him telling my boss I was lying about being pulled over to cover for the fact I was late. I blew up on him. I was so ducking mad. I have many other stories about this. A hole, and could rant about him literally all day. I've never disliked someone as much as him. Story 11. My coworker who tried to tell me that cancer can be cured by eating healthy organic foods which boost your immune system. She recommends people not to get surgery to remove cancerous tumors. She says the risks of surgery is worse than having the cancer, and it will go away if you eat healthy. Story 12. I feel bad saying this because this girl is not malicious in any way, but my coworker never, ever stops talking. She's really into anime, not judging that, but it's not my thing, and she will spend literally hours detailing all the characters and episodes of her shows. She is also writing a fantasy book. Nothing has been actually written, of course, and spends entire 9-hour shifts detailing the ridiculous and unoriginal storyline. Now, you might say I must be encouraging this in some way, but when she does this, I literally do not acknowledge, reply, nod my head, or let her know I'm listening in any way. I will continue to work and even just walk out of the room without saying anything, and she'll start right back up as soon as I'm back. I've asked for quiet, said I need to concentrate so I can't really listen to her right now. I've tried everything short of straight up telling her to button her yap. She still hasn't shut up for a single minute. If I tell the manager, I will look like a huge Karen. Story 13. Christina. She is the mean girl of the office. We actually used to be good friends, but we wronged each other. I apologized to her, but she refused to apologize because she did not think she did anything wrong. For a year, while I was dealing with infertility issues, she was going through a divorce, and that was all she talked about. Anytime I brought up my issues, she would usually turn it back to hers. Once her divorce was settled and I went through a third miscarriage, she told me she didn't want to hear about it because she didn't need to deal with the negativity. She likes to tell people how charitable she is, but she will talk bad about clients and has no empathy. She will walk by all her coworkers, it's a small office, and not even say hello until her one friend comes in, and then she acts like she hasn't seen her in years. She will make a big show of making plans for the office, but will exclude a couple of people, and she never confronts someone with a small issue. She runs to her boss or the office manager instead of taking care of it discreetly with the coworker. She is a shallow, small-minded instigator, and it would honestly be a harmonious office if it wasn't for her. Story 14. I work at a disability services agency, and I work one-on-one with individuals, so I don't really have coworkers. However, when I'm working with a participant and we go out somewhere like the library, it's easy to recognize other people who work for my agency. I don't know these workers by name, but I hate some of them because they do literally nothing with their participant, or they treat the person terribly. I've seen a lot of workers just put headphones on the participants and let them watch mindless videos for a long time. That's not work. It's not even babysitting, and it's incredibly disrespectful to the person you're supposed to be serving. Someone told me that they once saw a worker leave her participant in the car so she could go shopping Ulta. I've run into workers at my agency and have seen them yelling at their participants and treating them disrespectfully. It's disgusting. If you don't want this job, then duck and quit. Don't use people for money and treat them like crap in the process. Story 15. I have a coworker that I'm generally friendly with and is an okay person per se, like has never done anything bad to me personally. But when he gets on a customer service call about something that has affected him, he is so ducking rude to the poor agent. Like to the point that if I were on the receiving end of the call, I'd use the "sorry you're breaking up on me, sir. Hello, line and hang the duck up on him. It's made me look at him in a different light. And now that I've seen him do it regularly, I can barely stand him. You can't be nice to me and nasty to other people for no reason. I see through your fakeness. Story 16. We work in a fairly low-level, low-training position. Not complicated. But as far as she's concerned, it's goddamn rocket science. She's been on the job for a year now and is still asking day one questions and making day one mistakes, one mistake every single day. The rest of the team spends almost as much time cleaning up after her as we do on our own work. I'm always apologizing to customers on her behalf. My boss put her on the most brainless, mechanical duty, and she still manages to duck it up. She's like a program. The moment any situation comes up which she was not specifically programmed for, and I do mean any situation, such as a piece of information being in a different box than usual, her brain shorts out. She has changed my opinion on the phrase, "There are no stupid questions." She has this way of breathing in sharply whenever she's about to ask something. Every time I hear that sound, a shudder runs down my spine. Details. Story 17. My coworker, who constantly milks the clock and stands around doing nothing. I usually don't have to deal with him, but today was the final straw. Mother's Day, the busiest ducking day of the year in the restaurant business. He comes in late and is working the grill. I'm the baker, so I don't even work near him. He tells the other guys on the line, who are extremely busy, that he doesn't have enough pancake batter, which is his responsibility to stock, since he's making the pancakes, and proceeds to take a 30-minute break before we open. He wasn't even there an hour. Then he comes up to me and asks me to make the pancake batter for him because he's super busy. I looked him in the eye and said, "That is not my job nor my problem. You decided to take a 30-minute break knowing you didn't have any pancake batter? Make it yourself. I've got things to do." He shut up and made the pancake batter story 18. Finally, a place to rant. I work in a grocery store selling gourmet and imported cheeses. The person I work most directly with is a 55-year-old woman. I don't know why she doesn't like me. I can't think of anything in the 2 years we've worked together that would warrant this treatment, but she constantly talks down to me, grumbles under her breath about me, and talks about me when I'm not there. I had a mental breakdown in August of last year, and while I was gone, she told people I had complication from an abortion. When I went into shop and a person I didn't even know asked me if it was true, I ended back up in crisis. Luckily, I have a fantastic support system. She also had started a rumor the only reason my husband had proposed was because I was pregnant. All of these hurt because my family has a history with infertility. I've tricked myself into thinking I don't want kids. And then I hear stuff like that and it hurts. That's just the tip of the iceberg too. She is legitimately the one person I hate the most in the world. Story 19. He is an insecure twerp who talks to everyone like he is in charge of the whole operation. In reality, he seems to me to have very low average intelligence. The quality of his work is completely subpar, and he loves to stir up drama whenever possible. I could go on forever. He lied about accidentally starting a fire at work and asked me to cover for him, while at the same time berating other staff for not being careful about putting their cigarettes out. Every task given to him is accompanied by prolonged and audible groaning, literally for the entire length of the task. He makes sure you know he's unhappy. He listens to his own music in the office very loudly and hums and taps his feet loudly to the best of the music. When someone asks him to turn it down, he then storms off to another group of people to talk crap about how much the person sucks. In a group of talented professionals, he is by far the least talented, least educated, and least willing to learn. When someone gives him advice or direction, his response is literally just silence. He refuses to help himself with anything. He asks for help with things as easy as looking up an address or getting driving direction. He made up his own job title, lead designer, and put it in his email signature. We have a clear and recognized lead designer already. It makes about as much sense as me putting POTUS in my email signature. It's pure delusion. After writing this, I now think he is probably mentally ill or dysfunctional at some level. Even so, duck this guy. He doesn't get fired because we're too nice to do anything about this, and it's a small business. We don't have an HR dept or any way to sort this out. We all just live in misery with this dude. He is also the worst one-upper I've ever seen. And sometimes there's a twist. He will sometimes one-up you by simply not responding to your story after he's told his. He'll literally walk away from you as if you said nothing, as long as he got his story out. Story 20. I just quit my job at Subway yesterday for a few different reasons, but my manager was the main reason. Every time I go into work, she asks me a whole bunch of inappropriate questions like, did I have sex with my girlfriend? Or if she can get some weed off of it, all while in front of customers and the owners. The other reason I quit is because there are huge safety violations and the owner's work ethic sucks. They didn't want us to freshen up the ingredients like we were supposed to. I was just told to change the freshness label to whatever the current day was and just keep working. The hours crap, the pay is crap, the other employees are unprofessional as duck. Stay away from Subway people. Story 21. The sexton. He takes diabolical pleasure in running the vacuum cleaner when I'm practicing the organ. It's especially annoying when I'm in BB major and the vacuum is in its flattish a major. Story 22. Well, let's see here. The addict waitress who steals other people's tips and is always late. The pregnant cook who takes 20 minutes to get a pizza through the oven. It should take 10 at most. The 24-year-old manager who comes in hungover every morning and sleeps half of her shift off. The night shift driver who never does his chores, so I have to do them when I come in the morning. Proofing the dough is particularly annoying since it takes 4 hours. The area coach who doesn't understand why the store is understaffed and losing money hand over fist, but blames lazy people for not applying to work for minimum wage. When Walmart just stopped substances testing and is paying $10 per hour to wave hello at people. The corporate inspector who complains that my car is old and beat up, but can't seem to connect the concept that we aren't making any money. Story 23. The coworker I have to work with closely. Unfortunately, we share duties. She's proud to be a hard ass, aka being a real Karen. Nothing short of utter perfection is good enough. And even when things are perfect, she's seeking out the next error. All day, every day, I get to listen to her narrate every mistake she finds. She especially loves to point out my mistakes. But when I mention a number entered incorrectly by her, I get, yeah, I didn't mean to. She's inept with computers. I can't count how many times I've shown her the same Excel formula, a basic addition formula. It's painful to watch her mouse to every new cell instead of hitting tab or enter. The worst is how I've shown her to save a file as PDF, to email as a quote, and she still emails the spreadsheet in full, thus giving our customer all of our costs. Every story I tell gets commandeered by her so she can talk about her vile grandchildren. That, or how she has to wipe her mother when she visits the care home. Crap, I don't need to ducking know, but I do, in detail. Worst of all, she's a retiree from the bank. This isn't bad in and of itself, but every day she goes on about how she just does this for fun and doesn't need to work. She was just bored. It infuriates me because our position would be an amazing opportunity for someone looking to get out of a retail job. Someone in their 20s or 30s looking to develop a real career without needing to go to school for 5 years. To see her wallowing in this job when I know so many more tech-savvy people are looking for a good opportunity makes me irrationally angry. Story 24. The guy who cannot handle the slightest bit of pressure. Why are you working in a very popular bar Friday and Saturday nights? He'll blame everything that goes wrong on everyone else. He literally walked into me last weekend and spilt the drink he'd made on me, then started shouting about how it was my fault for being stood still, just picking mint. It's like he's an only child that was never told no, because he can't deal with even the slightest bit of criticism. I asked him to not dry his hands on the bar towels because I use them to polish glasses and I can't do that when they're wet. He proceeded to smash a bunch of crap about, because he doesn't like that. Me, the manager, and the owner have spoken about this many times, only for nothing to happen. They both agree his attitude absolutely sucks and something needs to change, and now he's being made supervisor. I'm handing my 2-week notice in on Friday. Story 25. You remember that bit in Good Omens with the chattering nuns who would say whatever thoughts crossed their mind regardless of how much everyone else wanted them to shut up? That's my coworker. Story 26. Corey. That's not her real name. She has terrible hygiene and constantly smells like an Italian sub. She's constantly complaining about money problems, but is always talking about how drunk high last night. When things don't go her way with a sale, she turns into an enormous Karen. For some reason, she thinks she's a great singer, despite me telling her, when she asked, that she's always off tune. This does not stop her from singing loudly with customers in the store. Constantly brings up to my customers, mid-conversation, how hard whatever she's doing in her life is. She practically yells when she talks. I hate her. Story 27. I have a coworker who blows his nose exactly once per day, always at lunchtime. That doesn't sound so bad, but I should mention that it sounds like a mix between an incredibly loud duck quacking and a foghorn. It comes out of nowhere and scares the crap out of me every single time. Story 28. She's an old coworker from my last job. She was crazy and so pushy. Here are a few examples. She would always want sources if I disagreed, but she would spout out whatever she wanted. Obama came to visit our state one weekend. As we were clocking out, she said, "Well, if I don't see you after this weekend, it was nice working with you." I asked why. Seemed dramatic. She said Obama was shutting down all roads out of our state, so we were trapped and he was taking everyone down to FEMA camps that have family-sized coffins. She thought he was coming to hit us all because we are such free thinkers. This was in Utah. She was cheating on her husband. She was genuinely surprised that this guy didn't want to run away with her and her 2 kids. She constantly commented on my food. I sometimes ate those lean cuisines and she would tell me that they put heavy metals in. The heavy metals were activated by the microwave and would collect in my brain so that the government could control me. Immunization. The US sends out immunizations to other countries so that the US could control them heavy metals. Autism and immunizations jet stream. She believed that politics are reptile people. The topper that made me change my schedule because I couldn't deal. I saw The Woman in Gold about art stolen during World War II. She's from Russia and we were on the same side, so I didn't think it would spark a whole thing. She went off about how the US didn't do anything, and Russia was the real winner of the war. All I wanted to talk about was stolen art from Russia. They had a malachite room that's stolen, and it turned into how the US ruins everything and didn't help with the war, and is the reason so many Russians died. It made me so mad. I never dissed her country. I never argued with her. Then she literally followed me out to my car saying, "I know this is hard to hear, but you have to." I told her I didn't want to talk about it, and she needs to learn to be respectful of people and their countries. Pulled up that dog that looks like Putin, thinking we were just having fun. Nope. She said I was being disrespectful of her home country. Anywho, glad that's over. Oh, she also makes her kids eat vegan and wouldn't let them eat snacks and cake at school because they were store-bought. Poor things. Story 29. I managed a big, very busy restaurant and bar for a few years. One of my fellow managers, Michael, was always a bit strange. He was from Alabama, very conservative in his manner and dress, a smart guy but very slow on the uptake. He wasn't clever, and so it made interacting with him really awkward, but whatever. Once, a drunk guy stumbled and fell face first into a metal ledge on the bottom of our front door. Michael and I were immediately there, taking care of this guy. We gloved up, got someone to call paramedics, and did what we could to take care of this guy. And man, was he messed up. He was bleeding profusely from the wound on his forehead. He was shaking. He didn't remember his name or where he was or the date. I applied pressure to his forehead and kept talking to him to keep him calm and from trying to get up. At one point, I asked Michael to take over, and he just stared at me, shaking his head no. It's relevant now to mention Michael was an Army medic in the past, and I was just some guy who once read a survival guide on first aid. The paramedics came and took the bleedy guy away, and I took the opportunity to ask Michael WTF. He said, well, you saw, he was with another guy. So, I didn't want to, catch AIDS or something. Drunk guy wasn't gay. Him and his buddy were unsuccessfully hitting in girls at the bar all night. Still, that response and his total lack of support during that moment made me hate this guy. Story 30. Well, on Friday, my coworker forgot that she needs to tell me when to reorder supplies, as she has done twice in the past. It's at the point where I keep an emergency stash of the supplies in my cubby that she did not know about. I only learned we needed more supplies when I went to the station and tried to run a function. When I asked her why she didn't tell me. We were out that morning. She at first said she didn't know I was in charge of reordering, then went on to insist that she told me 3 weeks ago that I needed to reorder. Our boss was present for that conversation. She knows she told me and she was sorry I felt bad for forgetting to reorder more, but it was not her fault I forgot. When I was all I didn't forget. You never told me. She started screaming at me. How dare I call her a liar? Why do I insist on bringing up the past? She knows she told me. Why was I trying to push the blame onto her? This was not her problem. And anyway, it is not her task to tell me when to order supplies because we all work her. It is absolutely her task to tell me when to reorder supplies, and we have gone over this twice now in the past with our boss, because she is the one who uses 97% of our materials and replaces the machine when it runs out. I bring up the past because it currently impacts us when we are out of supplies. My boss admits that she has the memory of a goldfish and routinely refuses to accept blame for anything because she thinks she can do no wrong. Rinse and repeat this for almost 2 years now, with any situation where she has to tell me information or deal with me being the one to educate her on functions. Highlights include her insisting to the boss, I never taught her a task when I taught it to her 5 times, and she refused to take notes. There was a witness to every teaching session, and coworker, honest to God, thought the witness would back her up instead. Story 31. The Pirate. He cosplays as Jack Sparrow on the weekends. Cool, we each have our own thing. For the first 6 months, he tries to get everyone to join in with him and his crew. Even after repeated no thank yous, he kept pushing. When other people are discussing something, he tries to butt in with the looses of connections. He's homeschooled. He's had a addiction, which God helped him out with. How do I know this? He shared this without prompting. He can't take a hint that I don't want to engage in any conversation with at all. Why do I not want to engage in conversation with him? Because he always manages to turn a 3-minute conversation into a 10-minute epic. He likes InfoWars. Always wears a wide brim hat everywhere. For Halloween, we are allowed to dress up. He dressed up as Indiana Jones, wearing the hat as mentioned before. His outfit was his normal, everyday wear. He wore the day before. Bo. Ugh. Gives me unsolicited advice regarding my diet. Mother ducker. I know my diet is bad, but story 32. I have a coworker who is extremely negative and very aggressive. Example. Another coworker is speaking about someone we all know who had been hospitalized. The annoying coworker starts fuming and threatening to get up and yell at the other lady, older lady who is the nicest person ever, because it's none of her business and she needs someone to shut her up. We all know that the other person was hospitalized, but the older lady had visited her the day before and was telling us how she was being discharged that day. The annoying coworker isn't even friends or anything with the one that got hospitalized, but she's just like that. She also talks about people in the most awful way. Another example, she was being extremely loud and silly to the point where she was almost screaming, and a coworker jokes about how she was hurting their ear. She smiles and tells them she'll stop. The other person turns their head and walks away, and annoying coworker said something like, "No, wonder your boyfriend dumped you, such a loser," in front of the rest of us. The other person had already walked away and didn't hear it. I try to stay as far away from her as possible, which is a reason I think she doesn't like me for. And story 33, the nurse. Least caring person I know. Just awful. It was announced in a meeting that she was not present for that the next day was Nurse Appreciation Day. Dead silence. Story 34, toss-up between Tom and Tim. Tom is a senile political hire who will be the first to tell you that he has no idea what the job description is for his 6-figure position. Thankfully, he spends most of his time on vacation, because when he's at work, he spends his time wandering around proselytizing and reminding everyone what a good Christian he is. After all, his church took in one of those poor, ignorant families and bought groceries for them after they all found Jesus and agreed to be baptized. Tim, on the other hand, is a slovenly, loud, well, at least knowing his job description, does nowhere near enough to earn his six-figure income. He spends half his day wandering from office of classically attractive woman to office of classically attractive woman, telling obviously false or inflated self-aggrandizing stories and cutting them off when they try to speak, all the while spitting into his dip cup. They are both obnoxious men that have no business being public service employees. Story 35. I have a coworker that just does the bare minimum and puts no effort into learning. It drives me nuts. Why can't you learn the basics? And why is management keeping you around? What is the value in keeping someone employed when they badmouth the company, can't use Google, and always have an excuse? Story 36. The person who thinks she knows everything about her role, but then continually disappoints at her lack of ability, thoughtfulness, problem solving, and follow through. When I try to train her on a new software, workflow, etc., she says, yep, yeah, yeah, the entire time I'm speaking. If you're saying yes, like, you totally got this, why am I showing you? Also cries at the slightest change in wind. Don't cry at work, it's not worth it, and no one will respect you, which is one of the things you complain about most with your team. All you do is complain about work in your life, like constantly. I don't care. I don't want to hear it. We all got problems, sister, and generally a lot. Ours are bigger and more challenging than yours, but I'm not going to bore you with my crap. Maybe I should keep this and use it as her review. Story 37. This guy at my work who is incredibly lazy, and yet most people seem to be okay with it. We unload trucks as part of my job, and he wouldn't be caught helping someone who has a large load, basically a requirement, in a million years. My boss has to nag him to do anything other than the bare minimum. And on top of all that, he acts like he's better than everyone there. He does the douchey fake out high fives and other crap like that all the time. His cockiness is out of this world. On top of all that, he doesn't want to be there ever. I don't care if he doesn't like his job, but I know he has the power to get a new one. He's taking up a spot on a limited team that some people would die to be on. Being a college student with anxiety, a job that pays relatively well, where I don't have to talk to a single customer ever, isn't disgusting. And I can listen to my music. This job is a dream. I love it. But he chooses to hate it and stay and make a lot of other people's days worse, all while blowing every paycheck on substances and alcohol, coming in hungover half the time. There's a time and place for everything, but work isn't the place for that. Story 38. I have a coworker who acts like he hates my guts. We work on a school bus together. He's the driver and I'm the aide, preschool. I buckle the kids into their car seats and maintain order. He refuses to talk to me, and when he does, he's very snappy and rude. I can't even ask him a question because most of the time he ignores me, just doesn't answer. Last time I tried, hey, is kid riding today? He ignores me. I'd like to keep her seat clear. He blows up, shouting at me. You should know this route by now. You've been on it for 8 months. Don't you know we just passed her stop? I apologized and told him that it was my bad, that I wasn't paying attention, and that I wanted to be able to talk to him on friendly terms. He never answered me, just ignored me. That was the last time we spoke. Now, months later, we're still riding in total silence. No, hello, good morning, no goodbye. I figure things out for myself. I don't ask him questions, and he doesn't speak to me. Story 39. Used to work 10-hour shifts in an office doing email marketing. It's really easy to get distracted and spend an entire shift surfing Reddit or Facebook. To avoid this, I would get up and go on a short walk when I would get burnt out or lose focus. One coworker would always tattle on me and say I was never in my desk. This same coworker would just watch movies on Netflix and fill out reporting documents to say that he did work that he didn't actually do. The company had layoffs later that year and I was laid off, but this guy wasn't. I was pretty salty. When people work long periods of time in front of a computer, everyone has their own way to stay sane and productive. There are better ways to move up in a company than trying to get people in trouble over trivial things. Story 40. I am a teaching assistant and was assistant to a teacher a few years ago. One, she got mad, told me off and stormed out, slamming the door as she went and careened about me to my colleague. What had I done wrong? I had comforted a crying child whose dog had died instead of sticking in the new spellings. 2, I was off sick the same day she had training. She had left a risk assessment on my desk for me to get signed, her responsibility, not mine, and it didn't get done. Told me the next day it was my fault and thought I would have been in big trouble if something bad had happened, then gave me the silent treatment all day. 3, told me the head teacher was unhappy with me and asked her to talk to me about my persistent lateness. I was never late. It just takes 2 minutes to get from the front door to the classroom on the other side of the school. When I went to the head teacher to explain, he was completely confused and told me he was very happy with my performance. So many stories, and they still make me so mad to think about. Story 41. This person, she would frequently talk about church and how Christian she was. One day she called in saying she had an emergency. When she got back to the office, She was complaining that her boyfriend's wife was upset at her boyfriend and her. She'd been seeing this married guy, knowing he was married, behind his wife's back, and had the temerity to be mad the fact that the wife was upset. Story 42. There's this woman. She is old and tells everybody all the time how experienced and good she is at this job. She's a cashier. She is constantly making everything a big drama. Like if a person leaves a cart, she'll frantically run around trying to find who it belongs to, type of dramatic. She only has about 3 teeth that I can see. She has dyed black hair with 3-inch white roots. She is constantly trying to impress me, telling me all sorts of stories. Her stories include that she not only has a bachelor's degree in one field of study, but received a full-ride scholarship to an Ivy League school and earned her master's degree in another field. She is fluent in Italian and Gaelic. Oh, and she also smells like cat piss. And I don't mean you get a whiff of it. I mean, you can smell her from across our small store some days. If she hangs a coat in our back room, the entire room reeks of it. Story 43. I recently got overruled and had to hire a guy I didn't want to. Lucky for us, he knows everything there is to know about everything, ever. It's a real ducking joy training him, especially because we hired 2, and the other is the sweetest old lady in the world who just wants to learn from me. It makes my day when dude, number 1, incorrectly corrects me in front of her. I find myself daydreaming that ceiling tiles might fall on him, or how sweet it would be to swiftly rip my keyboard from my desk and hit him in his smug head with it. Story 44. I have a coworker who is habitually late, routinely takes breaks lasting up to 40 minutes on a 15-minute break, falls asleep in his car on lunch, and comes back late. On top of this, he actively tries to avoid doing any work, has missed work 18 times in the last 6 months, and antagonizes my already grumpy boss at every opportunity. Management refuses to let him go due to how few people want to join our department, and they don't want to train anyone new. Story 45. Worked in the food business, so we had a wide range of people. Coworker hated all the teens that worked there, since he had worked there for however many years. But all these teens would just come and go. Banana Bag was constantly micromanaging me and assuming I did everything wrong. And when I did mess up a small thing, he would yell at me in front of the customer and make me redo it. Mind you that he was not a manager of any sorts. He was just a line worker like I was. My favorite story that has happened was when he was tattling to a customer about how I put the wrong kind of cheese on their food, and he was acting like I had just hit the guy's family and was near screaming at me. Customer just told him to calm the duck down, dude, and took the food anyway and thanked me for making his food. Story 46. He's the pushy, tricky salesman. He will tell you something that, while technically true, would hurt you and help him more in the long run, and he does it without blinking. He rubs how good of a salesman he is in our faces, while most of us know that his sales are bullcrap. Story 47. The woman who will put so more effort into the mental gymnastics it takes to explain why something isn't her job than it would take to actually just duck and do the thing I'm asking her to do. Story 48. I actually feel bad for this because he's a nice, funny person, but duck me. He is so loud. He basically yells all the time, slams things, and in general, just doesn't know how to be quiet. Story 49. I work with this guy in a kitchen that I catch staring at me upwards of 10 times a day, and it's an intense stare. He also follows me around the kitchen and talks to me about history games nonstop. He's gay, which I don't care about. Bai has said creepy things to me. I'm about to quit because of him. Makes me very uncomfortable. If this really happens normally to women, God bless them. God bless them all. Story 50. The cluster B woman who sits near me. Duck. She doesn't know my name. We have been working together for 2 years. Having a conversation? Not anymore. We are now listening to her. Does she have a basic question she could find the answer to in less than a second? Best if it's shouted to everyone. Somebody used scented lotion? 20 minutes of hysterics. Did you cover her work while she was faking an illness? She doesn't give a rat's ass. Something get lost or misplaced? It was stolen. Get security. She went so crazy one time, the police had to come drag her out. Fire her? Not in this life. Her personality disorder is a disability. The current scam is her saying she had a seizure so she can telework full-time. The people sitting next to her flat out heard her tell her doctor she isn't actually having seizures. They let her telework because then she isn't in the office. Story 51. Ducking Scott. Name not changed because duck him. Scott is my weird desk neighbor, so I can never escape him. Scott eats hard-boiled eggs at his desk. Scott likes to leave his desk drawers open all the time. Scott leaves the ducking volume turned on his cell phone and gets texts and calls all day. Scott has a sensitivity to perfume and strong scents, which is fine, and will aggressively confront me if he thinks I've used something. Scott is a big fan of using Lysol wipes multiple times a day. Scott lets his desk phone ring 3 or 4 times before answering, and will inevitably be an a-hole to the unfortunate soul on the other end of the line. Scott alternates between looking up fitness and self-help resources and ammo. Scott also never eats the Friday donuts. Scott is a banana. Don't be like Scott. Story 52. Coworker who is always right, and no one else knows what they're doing. This is a place that gets 40 to 50 applicants for every opening. Also doesn't follow instructions or play along with the team. We do agile/scrum type development. We mostly pick our own tasks. He'll pick up items from the list of approved tasks and say he'll do A, B, and C this sprint, and then doesn't touch them. He makes up his own tasks Y and Z and spends all his time on them. Testers who have questions about some change he's made come to me to ask questions because they don't want to spend an hour listening to rants about the immediate subject and 12 others. People have quit or transferred to avoid working with him, including 2 of his previous managers. How the hell this guy is still employed is beyond me. And he was fired from his previous job. That he's technically competent might be an excuse, I guess. Story 53, the one who stares at me around the office and started following me around. I'm sure to look at my butt. He also loudly declared that I was hot when I started, but that had lost some of my looks on face since then. But my body was perfect. Is that harassment? He said this to a group of men with me standing nearby. I ignored it, but I really don't like that guy. Story 54. I had this coworker once who went by the name Munchausen, and I'm sure you can guess why. He would lie about practically anything, and the running joke was that if he hadn't told a lie to someone at work, he'd take his dog for a walk just to find a stranger to lie to. Story 55. My mentor. He likes to have get-togethers at his home to build the team morale through strategy games, video games, and good food. He always announces these publicly and tells us in groups. Then he always clarifies that I'm not invited because I'm a girl and this is a guy's night. I'm the only woman engineer in our department. Literally everyone else is invited except me, and he was shocked when I expected to go the first time. When he expanded the invite to include techs and co-ops, the 2 women in those positions were also excluded. So I know it's not just me. It still sucks to have everyone else come in talking about the great party that weekend and networking opportunities that are off limits to me. It's at his home, so it's not like it's a work function that HR would care about, but it sure does create distance and block me from organizing events of my own. Story 56. This one woman named Leslie. I work at a daycare, so bringing your kids to work is acceptable. Her kids are complete brats. Her 5-year-old is super manipulative. He's going to be a real problem when he's older. His mom's idea of punishing him is taking away his iPad until he said sorry. That's it. She's also super conservative, as in she never sees a paycheck, she gives it straight to her husband, and then he gives her a $40 allowance every 2 weeks. She also sells doTERRA, so she's always pushing her all-natural lifestyle on us and to buy from her pyramid scheme. She also thinks she knows everything and always will give you plenty of advice, whether you asked for it or not. Story 57. The store we worked at together has since closed, so this is a former coworker, but I think it still fits. He was Mormon, and with anyone else, this wouldn't be a big deal. But he was one of those Mormons who think only men should be in positions of authority. So when I ended up being in a position to tell him what to do in a retail setting, it isn't like I was even his boss. He wouldn't listen to me. I would ask a male coworker who was younger than us, BTW, to go tell him to do something, and it would get done. So we were the same age, and he wouldn't do things I asked him to because I'm a woman. But the kid who was 7 or 8 years younger was okay. Story 58. The Karen who is so terrible at social cues. She also crinned to me about how she had to work a couple Saturdays after I came back from a trip where I'd worked 10 days straight of minimum 18-hour days. We lost our data center in a hurricane, and I was part of the team doing restores. There were a couple of 20-hour days on there when things got really hairy. She constantly tries to find out how much we are paid, believes Sandy Hook was faked, and has to know everyone's business. Story 59. This 40-year-old woman who constantly harasses the new guy around half her age. It would have been fine, all right? I have nothing against people horsing around with whomever they please. I would be a chill as duck about it if she was trying to be discreet, but alas. Patrick, do you love me? Patrick, can I touch your abs? The last part is a joke, but you get what I mean. She was loud. So the other supervisors reported her to the boss, and the boss was like, but I don't hear any noises from her. Well, yeah, that's because you're like BFFs. Story 60. The woman who sits next to me plays obnoxious top 40 pop most days without headphones. Numerous times, I along with others have asked her to please use headphones. She claims they give her migraines, yet every day when she walks into work, she is wearing a pair. I have explained to her that her music is distracting, but she claims to need it to help with her ad, and her boss infuriatingly agrees. So now I have started playing the song The Sound of Silence on repeat, slightly louder than her music, with permission from the other frustrated coworkers. The battle rages on. Story 61. I sat at a computer, so anyone who would come to talk to me, their crotch was at my eye level. Dan would come to talk to me about a project. Every goddamn time he had a routine. Pinch/scratch/grope his balls, then snort. Damn it, Dan. Blow your nose with a tissue and see a doctor about whatever is itching your nuts. Story 62. I was up until a month ago a TIG welder for a stainless steel fabrication company that had a piece of crap running the shop. Under his supervision, he called me a beaner to my face, sat on his fat ducking ass and refused to help new guys and stopped me from helping others, and had been stealing tools and scrap metal for years. The owner finally caught him and fired his ass this past Monday. I told the owner on my way out, but his hands were tied until the guy stole crap in front of a VP. Story 63. When I started at my job, a colleague was asked to give me a couple of training. I later found out she deliberately kept important information from me so that I would make mistakes and get in trouble for it. She also acts like she's BFF with everyone in the office, but the moment they turn their backs, she starts talking crap about them. You can hear everyone breathe a sigh of relief when she's not at the office. Story 64, he is so damn awkward to talk to. He disagrees with anything you say. Like if we are discussing a movie and I say something I like about it, he will find some nitpicky bullcrap to complain about and deign the movie horrible because of it. He is like CinemaSins, but without the satire. And he does it to everything, not just movies. Story 65. I call her Helmet. She's worked there longer than I have and cannot seem to complete the most simple task without requiring assistance from someone else on the team to reassure her and painstakingly walk her through the task. I'm talking, my garbage can is full and I have more things I need to throw away. What do I do? She's 20 and has no cognitive deficit other than being completely helpless. If I ever meet her parents, I'm gonna shake the crap out of them. Story 66. Mine is the one that always comes in with a bad mood and tries to spread it around as much as possible. Working at the drive-thru window, she'll drop the beverage repeatable routine. Doing oven warming, misspelled bag. Green bean, say hi to a constant stream of, why don't you know how this works? The only reason anyone tolerates her is because she works midday shift, so there's only a couple hours of exposure to her unpleasantness anyways. Story 67. Not so much an individual as a category. Temporary forklift drivers. They're generally the most clueless, incompetent duckwits known to mankind who never would have been hired had they interviewed directly instead of being sent along by the agency. Most last a day. The record is 3 weeks. Hey boss, the state of Massachusetts is at 3.6% unemployment. You want anything other than the dregs? You need to up the wages. Story 68. The blue jay that keeps eating all the seeds out of the bird feeder. He's intimidating as duck to other birds and hogs the feeder. Let some of the others have some. A hole. Story 69. Laura, you're not the manager. You've been here 2 months. Stop trying to tell everyone what to do. We're not going to do it. Also, you left all the old ads up last night, so the morning people had to rush to take them all down, so we wouldn't still have to give everyone 25% off. That was your only task last night. Story 70. Courtney sucks. She doesn't do her actual job, just snoops around into other people's work and tries to correct them, and then tattles to the supervisor. Also, she constantly walks around the office barefoot and doesn't wear deodorant. Damn hillbilly. Who is their weirdest classmate or coworker you ever had? Story 1. I worked in an office with 4 other men. One day after a mass shooting, I wondered out loud which one of us was most likely to come in one day and hit the other 4. For fun, we cast ballots, each of us writing down who we thought would do it. All 5 of us wrote down Pete, which means Pete even voted for himself. Story 2. Working in tech support, I was friends with Tim. Tim liked 3 things: baseball, wrestling, WWE, and my comedy. And he thought everything I said was hilarious. I could tell he was going to start laughing 10 seconds before he would. As I would arrive to the punchline, and sometimes just an end to a normal sentence, he would begin to shake and crack a smile. For example, this lady couldn't understand why her internet wasn't working. Tim shakes, starts to smile. Yeah, choking back laughter. And her router was unplugged. He would lose it. Made me feel like Dane Cook bringing down Madison Square Garden. I love you, Tim. Stay awesome. Story 3. At my college, there was a guy we called the Hat. He was a morbidly obese guy who wore Miu Mius his mom made with strangely patterned fabric, slide on slippers, blue lens John Lennon sunglasses, and a giant striped felt cat in the hat-looking top hat. He had crazy long hair that he wore in a ponytail. He had a beard that was mostly on his neck and not his face. He carried all his books in a very large roller suitcase. He would waddle past a group of people to a doorway and hold the door for the first person in the group, then walk through the door and close it so the next person would need to open it up. He used to pick a terrible accent and speak in it for weeks at a time. He played an acoustic guitar in the quad by randomly placing his fingers on the frets and strumming up and down while freestyling song lyrics about people who walked by. He would eat entire packages of lunch meat during class, pulling out individual slices and squirting mustard on them, then rolling them up and shoving them in his mouth. He started his own non-school sanctioned fraternity, of which he was the only member, then proceeded to haze himself for Pledge Week. He was a strange guy. Story 4. A dude. He wore a fedora, often wore a duster, which was weird because it's really hot here, except for maybe 2 months out of the year. His hair was always greasy, etc. You get the picture. Somehow or another, he got my phone number. He texted me to ask me out. I politely declined. An hour later, he texted me a photo of his arm. He did my name into it. It terrified me. I freaked out and showed my mom. It made me cry. I told the school counselor the next day. Story 5. Had a classmate who hung out with the Weeb Squad, and he would summon you to their table in the library at lunch to show you that he drew a voodoo doll and named it after you. He did this to scare a bunch of kids, I guess. The time he did it to me, I just said, "Thanks, Michael," and walked off. He didn't like that he didn't freak me out. I'd also like to add a bit on, picture me as a giant emo kid. Michael chose the wrong target that day. Story 6. Todd. He stood about 5 feet 6 inches, or 5 feet 9 inches if you measured to the top of his mullet, laughed like a donkey, was physically incapable of talking quietly. Honestly liked the guy, but he could not keep his cool around attractive women. At least once every shift we would hear this high-pitched "oh" from the other side of the store. That was the sound of Todd noticing a woman, followed by the supervisor aggressively tracking him down to contain the situation. I'm not sure if it was the union or something else that kept him in the job, but he was working there a long time before I was hired, and I like to imagine that he's still there today. Story 7. At my first professional job, I worked with a 28-year-old woman who might as well have been 10. Her parents picked her up and dropped her off. She had to have them constantly reassure her, and her mom handled most of her affairs for her. I honestly never really understood why the office tolerated her incredible childish nature. The top 2 moments for me. 1. She got really emotional because a baby bird fell out of a tree outside. Her mom had to come pick her up, while her dad tried to put the bird back in the nest. 2. I shared that my family dog was going to be put down as he was 19 years old and his quality of life was nearly 0. This caused her to enter a screaming fit, where she locked herself in the bathroom, and then she couldn't figure out how to unlock herself. We had to call a locksmith via building management. Wherever you are, Sarah, I hope you are okay. Story 8. Margot, my 50-year-old coworker, she made my life miserable for almost 2 years. Everything started when I was 18. We were talking and I told her that I was in a band, so she told me that musicians were a bunch of thieves who only wanted people money and that playing that guitar was nonsense and a scam. So I told her that she was being plain rude and ignorant, so she decided to spend the following 2 years making my life hell. She tried to get me fired several times, called me names, mocked me for having depression, made fun of my looks. At the time I had long hair, and everything I did, her son would do it better. The last straw was when she called me a son of a Karen. I stopped, looked at her dead in the eye and said, "You're the most pathetic person I've ever talked to. You're the age of my mom, and yet you act like a teen. I'm sorry for your husband and your son. They don't deserve to live with you." After that, I went to HR and asked them to move me to another department, and here I am, with 3 great coworkers and a great boss who calls me Scanner Man because I'm the only one who knows how to use a scanner. Story 9. I worked at this movie theater with this girl, Liz. Something was a bit off with her, but not intellectually, but she was just off. She would develop crushes on male coworkers and constantly harass and be suggestive. She would also create very detailed erotic picture books with characters that looked exactly like and had names that were like 1 letter off from whoever her crush du jour was. After I got a job as a pizza boy in the same plaza, I found out she had created a book called Confessions of a Deranged Pizza Delivery Driver that featured me and her involved in crap. So yeah, that was Liz. Story 10. A guy from freshman year of college. Tanned Filipino dude who dressed as Hatsune Miku every single day to school. Like the whole cosplay, plus a Hatsune Miku backpack. Edit. Yes, it's a school in California. No, he never went in character, at least not in class. It was just normal for him to wear the full Hatsune Miku cosplay, including the leggings to school, and had a Hatsune Miku backpack. As far as I know, he doesn't have any mental disorder, just super big anime dude. Yes, he had more Hatsune Miku, like a Hatsune Miku pen. Notebook filled to the brim with Hatsune Miku stickers, and laptop, which had a Hatsune Miku skin over it. He acted like a shy but normal dude and talked normally with a small lisp. I don't know if he still goes to my school because back in freshman year, I saw him all the time walking to classes because he stood out like a sore thumb compared to other students. I don't know if anyone bullied him directly to his face, but people definitely talked about him here and there. His cosplay was pretty top-notch, except for the fact that he wore it every day to school. Story 11. In college, I had a classmate that appeared to be a git. If you had a class with him, he would literally interrupt the teacher after every statement to repeat what they just said in the form of a question. For example, Prof. So if the formula 2x equals 12, divide 12 by 2 to give you the solution 6. This is student. So in this example, I divide 12 by 2 to get the answer, drove everyone up the wall. I watched professors chew them out, assigned tutors, and one straight up adopted a ridiculous Willy Wonka policy that all questions had to be submitted in writing at the end of class. People changed classes the instant they saw him walk into a room. I took a summer English literature class rather than have another class with him in spring. 2 years I kept ending up in classes with this nitwit. And it wasn't until someone in his organic chemistry class figured out what he was doing did anyone realize. He was sandbagging. He was constantly asking questions to slow down the class in the hopes that he could get a higher GPA with a curve and increase his chances of getting into medical school. Classes in basic undergraduate English and math are not graded this way. The professors don't change the exam and they don't grade on a curve, because the classes are required materials for more advanced classes. In other words, he was an idiot for completely different reasons. Story 12. I worked with a lot of weirdos when I was a security guard. The field seems to attract them, but the weirdest was Carl. Carl used to rinse his mouth with straight bleach regularly, would shoot at his neighbors' houses out his window with a .22, and once said to me, "Someone has put stones in the toilet again." When I asked why someone would do that, he said, "To make me look bad." I think Carl was crazy. Story 13. Weirdest coworker I've had, I'll call her Anne. Anne was in her late 20s, but almost every story of her purchasing anything either started with, "My man bought me," or "My daddy bought me." And I don't mean just expensive things. Even her basic shoes and purse were purchased by either her, or father. So, fairly immature. You get the picture. She constantly tried to drown out the rest of us, making light typing noises and stray conversation by turning up one of those sleep machines quite loudly. Her next cubicle neighbor constantly had to ask her to turn it down. The white noise setting was okay, but she also sometimes set it to ocean or rainforest. And rainforest included bird sounds. Even though she was trying to cover up our noises, she had no qualms about making her own. 65% of her job consisted of data entry, but every time she made a mistake, she exclaimed, "Cheese and crackers, comma, dangit, stars and stripes," or "oh gosh darn." And she made a lot of mistakes in day. She also loved to remind everyone that she was germophobic and preferred things perfect and clean at all times. Of course, she was one of those people who labeled herself OCD, even though really, she just liked things neat and tidy. One day, a coworker who sat all the way across the room from her and came in with a bit of a cold. That coworker couldn't help from coughing and sneezing, and Anne made it known she would have preferred someone contagious stay home, even though the sick coworker kept to herself, didn't touch the shared stuff, and sat far away from Anne. Everything was silent when I noticed Anne get up and head towards the sick coworker. Without saying a word, I hear an aerosol can go off, followed by, "What the hell, Anne? Don't just spray me with Lysol. What's wrong with you? You can't just sneak up on people and spray them with chemicals." Anne tried to apologize, but of course in her mind, she was doing the sick coworker a favor by just drive-by spraying her with a disinfectant. She kept insisting that although she would never go to work sick, if she did, she would absolutely appreciate it if we sprayed her with Lysol. Finally, the weirdest thing was that she always had perfectly pedicured and painted toenails and always wore open-toed shoes, despite always complaining her feet were cold. But every single time anybody complimented her toenail color or shape, she'd always reply with, "Well, my man insists I always have perfect feet and beautiful toenails, so he pays for me to get a pedicure every week." Finally, her next cubicle neighbor coworker told her, "You keep saying that, and we don't care about your man's foot fetish." Also, I worked with her for 1 year and could never find out if her "my man" was a boyfriend, fiance, husband, sugar daddy, or even his name. For the whole year, he was simply my man. I'm not 100% sure he exists. Story 14. I used to work at a grocery store, and we had a guy that was a utility clerk, so he basically just pushed carts and stocked shelves. Well, this guy would only stock the feminine hygiene aisle. He would stock the tampons about 5 times a day. He would also clean the girls' bathroom, and only the girls' bathroom, 3 times a day, which wasn't even his job. Story 15. In my university, there's a guy who told us how he was conceived in his personal introduction. When the class was asked why they used Snapchat, he was like, "For my personal life." He has really crazy hair, a mustache, wears aviator glasses, and always carries around a hiking backpack. He's like a real-life cartoon, and he's really fun to be around. I saw him freshly shaved and without his glasses once. He's secretly attractive. Story 16. Dude I worked with was always putting on an act to hide the insane rage/hatred for the world whatever he felt. We'd sometimes watch out the window as he came in some morning. You'd see him slam his car door. Sometimes he'd swear loud enough to hear, and then he'd walk toward the door looking like he was coming to shoot the place up. Then he'd pause outside the door, take a few deep breaths, and come into the shop with a wide smile and asking everyone how they were doing. He preferred to work alone, And he worked with a relentless fury that was scary. He had to bust up a bunch of old concrete barricades with a sledgehammer one time, and he was out there swinging with all his might in the blistering sun until he'd have to drop the hammer and fall flat on his ass out of breath for a 5-minute break before getting back to it. He was working through lunch one of those days, so I went to go tell him in case he lost track of time, and as I walked up, he was swearing with every swing. Mother, crack, ducker, crack, mother, crack, ducker, crack. I just tentatively yelled over to him, "Hey buddy, it's lunchtime." I could tell I had startled him, but when he turned to me, he was smiling. "Hey, thanks man. I could use some overtime though. I think I'm gonna push through today. Enjoy your lunch." Sometimes when he thought he was alone, sometimes people would hear him talking to himself, calling himself down and complaining how much he hated life. I personally heard him around the other side of the building one day say, "Duck, I wish I was dead." The guy was seriously scary because of all this chained emotion and relentlessness. By all accounts though, he was never anything but kind to anybody. Never had a bad word to say about others and often did things out of his way to help others. I think he was a good guy going through some real problem. But as I mentioned, the fact that he could be so kind and at the same time so full of rage was unnerving. This is based off of my own experiences and observations I've heard others make. What one of my coworkers possibly would have written about me in this thread. I just got a lot of self-hate from my childhood, anxiety, and OCD on top of that. I try to work extra hard to prove my worth because I feel like everyone else will assume I have none as I assume. The yelling out loud and talking to myself is part of the OCD. I get these negative, intrusive thoughts, and speaking or yelling out loud distracts me from them long enough to derail them. I try to keep it to myself, and it's embarrassing having someone hear me, but I'm working on it all. I'll probably be okay. Story 17. Coworker talks to herself as well as inanimate objects and responds to herself as if it's an actual conversation. I can tell what she ate for lunch based on what barnyard animal noises she's making when she returns from break. She gets on her hands and knees and barks like a dog at random. A simple paper cut would make you think she lost a limb by the screams. I'm the only person on staff who isn't terrified of her. Story 18. In college, I worked in the mailroom for the library system. Most of the other employees were fellow college students, but there were 3 career employees, all guys in their late 40s to mid-50s. Joseph looked like a hippie stoner, left over from the 1960s who smelled of BO and pot. Bob generally was the guy who would drive the mail to other parts of the campus system, and was probably somewhere on the autism spectrum. He had a lot of strange gestures and tics and would often rhyme words when he got excited or nervous. So Joseph and Bob would nitpick at one another every so often, and after having worked together for what appeared to be about 20 years, they had pressure points on each other. One day after they began arguing about something completely mundane, Bob went off on Joseph, essentially calling him a smelly hippie. Joseph basically sat there and took it, and then very calmly just said, "Hey Bob, what word rhymes with orange?" Bob just starts to kind of get agitated, kept mumbling a bunch of gibberish that sort of sounded like it rhymed with orange. And Joseph just kept repeating his question, getting louder and louder. Bob ended up running out of the mailroom and was gone for 3 to 4 days. Story 19. In college, there was a strange quiet guy. He seemed to be a bit of a loner and really liked sitting next to me. Thought he was kind of odd. One day in the middle of class, out of nowhere, he looks at me and says, "I love you." I acted like I didn't hear it. He just stared. He stopped going to class shortly after. Story 20. I worked at Pizza Hut a while ago. There was a delivery driver that worked there and everyone liked him. He was funny, cracked jokes all the time, and seemed like a good guy. At the time, I had no car, so he would give me rides home if he had a delivery in the area. One day, he didn't show up to work and nobody could get a hold of him. We found out he didn't show up because he lost his girlfriend and then tried to hit himself. He lived through his attempt and is now doing life in prison. Not weird, but definitely a WTF situation. Story 21. Went to grade school with a kid who snuck a ferret on an overnight class trip to DC. Had some explaining to do when he didn't want to put his backpack through an x-ray machine at the Capitol Visitor Center. Same kid also routinely ate the graphite out of mechanical pencils because he thought it was lead and therefore a necessary vitamin. So many things wrong with both his logic and his brain in general. Story 22. As far as a weird coworker goes, I worked for a construction company in accounting. There were 4 of us in the department and we shared one big room as an office. Our supervisor sat on one side, us 3 on the other. The company was extremely laxed, no real dress code, just get your work done, and you could pretty much do whatever you wanted, and if you finished early, you could go home a little early and get paid for the day. Anyway, we all got along fine. Except this real old lady in the department. Let's call her Leslie. She hated all Joy and all of us. The only person she partly tolerated was our supervisor, who was much younger than her. She would constantly care about the way we stunk of perfume. She would pretend to choke when I put on scentless lotion. Mind you, she smoked and reeked of cigarettes. She would huff and puff if you put anything on her desk for her to do. If her phone rang, she picked it up with, "Yeah, what?" Just a miserable old bat. But then one day, our supervisor sat us down and goes, "I feel the need to address something because it had been brought up to me nearly every day for the past 6 months. I know we are very relaxed here, but apparently phone usage is a problem with some people. I know I use my phone, I'll try my best to cut down too." And we side-eye each other and Leslie starts to full-blown cry, like weep pitifully. "It's only her," she nearly shouts, pointing at me, the youngest of all 4 of us. "She just is always on her phone. She never puts it down." She is sobbing, tears and snot running down her nose, the whole bit. "I can't take it. She is always on her phone," she shouts. My supervisor's eyes get really wide. She's freaked out, and she says, "Leslie, I really don't see her on her phone that much. No more than any of us here." My other coworker chimes in, "Yeah, I don't see Christaboo 14 on her phone that much." And I sit right next to her. We all use our phones occasionally. "No, you just don't see it. She is always on her phone," Leslie screams, her voice echoing in the room at this point. At this point, my supervisor escorts her out. I don't see her again the rest of the day. The next day I come in, a few construction guys from the yard are in our office, building her a cubicle in the corner of the room. She literally just could not stand to see me. No complaints about the phone after that, but she still continued to be a miserable old bat. I have no idea why she targeted me or what the issue was. She was about 70 and I was in my 20s. Maybe it was just the age gap. I have no idea. But it was definitely one of the more bizarre experiences I've ever had with a coworker. Story 23. We have this coworker. We call him Ed Trumpet. He basically makes these trumpet sounds when he did something good. He also using his table as his own drum set. When he comes in, he takes off his shoes and puts on these loafers. Story 24. She's sitting behind me now. 65 years old. Never married, no kids, no cats. Just church. Literally goes to church every single day. Has no other interests or hobbies. Misogynist. Super right-wing. Doesn't understand any modern idiom or pop culture reference. I've been forced to share an office with her for 7 years. Story 25. Had a coworker that was a legit pathological liar. We caught her in so many lies. These weren't even the make yourself look better type, but basically anything to get attention. She told us one Monday that she was sore because over the weekend she fell down 7 flights of steps. We asked for clarification. Maybe she meant 7 steps. Still a big fall. But no, she doubled down. She claimed she rolled down 7 flights of stairs, one after the other. She also claimed she was allergic to condoms when someone made a joke about me being allergic to latex. She wasn't claiming she was allergic to latex, mind you. I remember this one vividly because she claimed any guy was lucky to be with her since they had a reason to raw dog it. Story 26. Had a coworker that had a lot of red flags. She would be slurring her words and tumbling over one minute, and when a boss showed up, she was perfectly normal. It was impossible to tell which condition she was faking. She said she survives cancer. Confirmed. However, she brought it up in every single conversation. She also would call in sick the busiest day of the week every week and say it was a side effect from her medications. She also couldn't work nights or holidays because of her medication either. I'm supportive and understanding of those who have cancer or have survived it. You don't get to play it like a trump card every time you don't want to do something. She would tell strange stories about her husband abusing her. She would even go as far as calling up our night shift employees screaming that she was being beaten. The employees would call the cops and she would deny it ever happened. She once claimed I hit her and pushed her in front of a lobby full of customers. All of the customers confirmed I didn't even touch her. She still works there almost 10 years later. I'm not a fan of going into that business. Story 27. I had a coworker, let's call her Jess, who became a bit of a weird legend after she was gone. Every time a new person gets hired at the store, we tell them the story of the infamous Jess. It goes like this. Jess was hired shortly before Mother's Day because we are a seasonal company and need extra help during holidays. I was not assigned to train her, so I was one of the last to meet her. Our first day working in the back together was on Mother's Day itself. This woman, who had never met me before, introduced herself in the same breath that she told me her mother passed 2, her children's father was an addict who left her 3, she was abused 4, her new boyfriend was an angel who liked to call her mommy. She told me all this without even pausing to ask my name. My reaction started with genuine empathy and ended in the realm of incredulous shock that a stranger had just proudly displayed all the skeletons in her closet like she was on an episode of Jerry Springer. I looked around to my coworkers, willing one of them to meet my eyes and silently agree that this was not normal behavior. But no, they went about their business without missing a beat. Apparently, I was not the first to receive this greeting from Jess. But the legend of Jess doesn't stop with her astounding lack of regard for her own privacy. Jess was also to put it in the gentlest words I can use, while still conveying the true essence of the thing, a reel. For example, one time I worked the shift before her and had a burst of kindness which led to me doing nearly every single task she was assigned that night. She always complained about how bad her feet hurt from standing all day working 2 jobs. So I thought that I would give her a chance to sit down and rest. When she came into work, I told her, "Hey Jess, I did every one of your tasks for tonight except X and Y." She looked me dead in the face and says, without even the hint of a smile, "Well, you almost finished." Needless to say, we all hated Jess. And yet, it was still a shock when she and her angel of a boyfriend were caught on the security cameras breaking into the store, stealing all the money in the cash register, attempting to remove the drop safe, taking the store credit cards, and making their getaway in the delivery van, which they also stole. Didn't see that one coming. Fast forward about 2 weeks, and the incompetent police in my town haven't managed to catch a woman driving a neon delivery van who is actively using the very traceable store credit cards. Jess, with a warrant out for her arrest, walks into the goddamn store during business hours, strolls into the back, and asks for her paycheck. "I don't know where you are, Jess, but I guess I should thank you for giving the store the running jokes. Hi, I'm Jess and I was abused and, well, you almost finished." One last note, don't start downvoting me over an apparent lack of sympathy for someone who was the victim of a crime. We found out later that she was some sort of pathological liar with a criminal record and an addiction, and that she used a fake name on the application. All of her stories were fake. I would never laugh about someone who had truly experienced that horror. Story 28. I worked with this girl who just stopped caring about certain aspects of her appearance. Every single day she wore makeup, but she didn't appear to wash the makeup from the day before off before applying today's. She stopped combing her hair and ended up with a massive dreadlock on top of her head. She was white. And when she leaned over you, dandruff would fall all over the place. She'd wear flip-flops daily and you could see the dark marks around the straps from where she hadn't washed her feet in a couple days. Once her feet were purple for 3 days. But she would go shopping and buy all these nice outfits and wear them into work. So she cared about her appearance somewhat. Except one day a week where she'd wear a too small white tank top that had dirt stains on it. She also kept a log in Excel of when people would come and go throughout the day and use it to try to get others in trouble. She would email my boss every day to let him know that I had come in late. Except it had been explained to her by my boss that I was not late and to stop messaging him about it. Once I wore glitter nail polish and she reported me, we had no rules about nails or their colors. Story 29. A guy I sat next to in human geography. He would take my things and lie about it. Sometimes the crap he would do really pissed me off. And one day I called him out for stealing my stuff. I could literally see my pencil sharpener and my pack of gum in his backpack. He denied it. I go to the bathroom, and when I get back, several days' worth of notes are completely scribbled out in my notebook. I know it was him because who else would do that? Needless to say, I switched seats after that day. Story 30. Had a class in community college with a guy who didn't own a car. Every week after class, my friend and I would give him a ride home. Every time he would as us in, and we'd politely say no. One of my other friends, who works in a mental health facility, found out about this and told us to never ever go into this guy's house. Said she couldn't say why because of patient confidentiality, but just don't. Story 31. I had a coworker that knew every episode of the Teletubbies by heart. He was like 30 years old. A lot of you have been asking if he has kids. He doesn't. He's just really into Teletubbies. Story 32. The college I go to had orientation for incoming freshmen. It lasted 2 days, so we slept overnight in a dorm and we each had a roommate. My roommate kept the light on all night. Story 33. Cameron is the strangest person I've ever met. Here's the story of my friendship with Cameron. A 5-year-old me is hanging out with a friend named Bananawad McGee. Bananawad has a weird neighbor and he wants to show me him. We go to his backyard and I see another 5-year-old kid running around pretending to be a tiger. Bananawad starts making fun of him, but I like animals and I ask him if he wants to hang out, to the displeasure of Bananawad. Fast forward a bit and me and Cameron are best friends. Seriously, me and this wacky ducker hang out every day after school, and we have a lot of fun. His parents are a bit protective of him, so we often broke their rules and had ourselves mischievous fun. We did everything normal kids did. We wrestled, had sword fights, bounced on trampolines, ate candy, drank soda, and went to playgrounds and did kid things. We got into trouble, powered through the groundings, and go into more. We even opened a lemonade stand at one point, but the other kids on our street did not like Cameron. They think he's a freak, and I get into a lot of fights protecting him. Even though we're good friends, this puts a strain on our relationship. Cameron has to go to a special school, and nobody at my school really wants to be my friend because of him. So I tell him that we can't be friends, and he's understandably pissed. Throughout my childhood, this happens a lot, and it takes me a while to realize that everyone else has started seeing me as a freak too. Fast forward to a 10-year-old me. Me and Cameron are still friends, even with the bull crap. But whatever is wrong with his head is really starting to show its colors. He starts having to see his doctors more and taking more medication, which he hates. His parents begin dedicating most of their attention to his little brother, who's a toddler, and Cameron's behavior suffers for it. He begins lashing out at his school, and after he attempts to hit another student, he's expelled from the special school. Because of his expulsion, his parents are forced to hire a babysitter for him while they're at work. The babysitter's name is Joan, and if I remembered her last name, I would post it too. Joan is the definition of human garbage. Joan is a 60-ish years old woman who had done nothing with her life. Joan stays with Cameron's grandparents and mooches off of them without paying for rent, bills, utilities. Joan hits Cameron and calls him a ducking retard daily. My dad gets mad at me too sometimes, so I don't know what's wrong. Fast forward again to a 12-year-old me, about to hit middle school, the 7th grade where I grew up. My dad starts making actual money, and my parents decide to move us to a better house. It's an exciting time for my family, finally being able to move up. Not only that, but Cameron's parents found out about some of the abuse and decide to pay for Cameron to stay at the after-school program at my school. He tells me, and so we start hanging out there. During this time, Cameron begins hating me out of nowhere. This is the first time that Cameron's mental issues begin ducking up our friendship. Whenever he sees me, he starts screaming and yelling things like, "Get the duck away!" and "Help! He's gonna hit me!" And nobody knows why. He won't talk to his parents, he won't talk to counselors, he won't talk to the teachers, and he certainly won't talk to me. After a few days trying, I stopped trying. After a few weeks, he's out of my mind. I would later find out that Cameron and he's life. I don't think anything has traumatized me worse than my dad picking me up from school and busting out crying in the parking lot trying to tell me the news. I couldn't bear to go to his funeral. I wish I would have anyways. And I have no idea what his family went through after his death. I went to youth group, Baptist Town, and everyone there was pretty much like, well, that freaky is gone. And so I never went back to church. I don't know if this answers the prompt because there are so many strange ducking stories about the times I shared with this kid. I could go on forever about all the times he lightsaber dueled strangers walking by or how he thought he was Indiana Jones for a minute, but I don't know if I have the balls to start bawling at work. Story 34. I've had like 8 different jobs now since high school, mix of restaurant, retail, now in an office. The one that stands out the most is a girl I worked at a cafe with. She was pretty argumentative with people off the bat, so it was a bit of a red flag. One day we were super busy, about 2 weeks into her starting. My manager asked her to stay on the grill station. I was on bar with one other. We had 2 on till, 1 in dish area, and she was supposed to grill any sandwich orders. Systems flawless. She says, "Oh crap, I actually have to leave 30 minutes early," and runs upstairs. We all look at each other as we see order after order printing out on grill. So for the next 15 minutes, we're all like, wow, I wonder what came up. And we're pulling espresso shots while running over to the grill. I go upstairs and I see she has taken 3 chairs from the staff room, made a makeshift bed and is laying down. I go, "Are you okay?" And she pretends to be sleeping. I tiptoe back downstairs and I couldn't keep it in. I blurted out to the team, "Okay, she's ducking sleeping upstairs." That's what was so urgent. My manager went upstairs and apparently told her, "Unless you are ill, either come back down for the rest of your shift or don't come back." She then told him that she's an actress and had a long day and needed rest. He then said, "Cool, we'll wrap it up for you today. Don't forget any of your stuff." Awesome manager, and he dealt with it well. That girl was ducking psycho. It was just little thing. Rather than bussing a table with a tray, she'd walk over, take 1 glass, walk back over, take a plate, walk over. When someone would ask her, "Do you want a tray so you can carry more?" she'd just freak out and go, "Do you want me to drop a bunch of dishes?" She was the worst. Meant to say, my manager handled it really well when he told her, "Don't forget any of your stuff," as in, don't forget anything on your way out, you Karen, because you're fired. Story 35. This girl who was recently fired from my job. She was rude, obnoxious, and had poor personal hygiene, to stick it to the patriarchy society. Like she stunk, and it made everyone in the vicinity uncomfortable. She would always burst out weird things to people and make fun of them. Then, when confronted about her rudeness, she would say, "I'm just a piece of crap. I'm a hole." I tried to be nice to her and not judge a book by their cover. But about 2 weeks in, I was having a discussion with a coworker about me wanting to get a job in law enforcement. She heard from across the room and yelled, "I just immediately lost a lot of respect for you. You just want a badge to hit people and arrest people for smoking substances." I just ignored it, but it made me furious considering my backstory of growing up in the ghetto and being surrounded by poverty of people with all backgrounds, nationalities, ethnicities, etc. I saw all of those people as family, and most of my friends are people of color that support me going into law enforcement. Oh, and I'm Catholic, so every day she'd come up to me and was very anti-religious around Easter time. Story 36. Coworker in a long-gone steel mill. We shall call him Ghoulie, since that was close to his name. Ghoulie was odd on so many levels, and while I was a new employee, he had been there for about 20 years. Ghoulie would eat off the floors and out of the trash cans. This was a job paying in the 50 to 60,000 a year range. He would steal the leftover slivers of soap left in the showers and squish them together to make one large ball of soap, but didn't shower at work. Ghoulie would evaporate on midnight shift for an hour or so, then end up back at his station with a trash bag full of clothes boots that he had acquired from hitting all the dumpsters. Then, he would try on each item of clothing and keep them all. It was common for his shirts to say Joe, and that wasn't his name. This is a steel mill. No one expected hospital sanitization. Hell, we flicked our smokes on the floor and spit a lot. It was dirty and you have to breathe. So you can imagine the sheer pits the dumpsters had to be. He would wear thrown-out boots. The contract got you a free pair of boots each year, without socks. So boots guys had sweat in for months in ungodly heat. He would just slap them on his feet and go about his business. Ghoulie would drink your drinks if you didn't keep an eye on it like a hawk. Once a guy left a trail of Oreo cookies about 50 yards long from the storage area in the warehouse, back to his station to see if he would reappear. It worked. Here he comes. Like an episode of Family Guy, but well before that show. Just bending over, eating a cookie, then taking 4 steps and repeating, "Oh, piece of candy." Ghoulie would say he was jacking it in the coil fields, imagining some of the female foremen. This is a steel mill, not a Starbucks. These were big old corn-fed women that were strong enough to break into a male-dominated company in the 70s. They were strong and proud, but they weren't spank-bank material. Ghoulie would cross aisles looking one way and holding his arm out the other way. Think dab, but no arm across the face. There were battery-powered coil haulers that would move at a good clip down these roads. Plus being electric, they made no sound. They were killers and had confirmed that fact a few times over the years. His logic was if they hit his arm, he would feel it and move. Instead of looking back and forth like a normal person, Ghoulie had been making 50 to 60,000 for 20 years and bought nothing, no car, no wife, no clothes, see above, no house since he lived with his 80-plus-year-old parents. So God only knows where his money was, probably buried in his backyard. Anyhow, his mother got sick and ended up in the hospital and died of a few lung-related issues, emphysema, pneumonia, that kind of stuff. Dude was a total nutcase. And that's saying a lot if you stand out in the weirdness of a normal manufacturing plant. Story 37. About 10 years ago, the place I worked at, Glass and Glazing Factory, hired this 16-year-old kid. Every day that week, he would disappear into the toilet for at least 20 minutes at a time, upwards of 3 times a day. We all assumed he was beating off in there and had a laugh about it amongst ourselves. It got progressively worse. The Thursday, he literally wasted 2.5 hours in there. Until on the Friday, the boss told him he needed to pick up his act, to which he replied that he didn't appreciate having his work ethic questioned, and that he wouldn't be back Monday. That last day, around 3:30 p.m., he went into the toilet again, and at about 4:40 came out and said that he'd been bitten by a redback spider, Black Widow, and needed to go to the hospital. So he got on his BMX bike and left. One of the other guys went in there after that to kill the spider, and discovered a stash of our touch-up spray paint bottles hidden behind a steel I-beam in the corner of the toilet. The kid had been stealing the spray paint and huffing it in the toilet until he passed out. Story 38. Knew this kid from 5th grade. Through graduation, let's call him Jay. At first, I really couldn't stand Jay. I found him very annoying, but he just thought we were best friends and always followed me around. Since I wasn't the most popular guy in the world, by 8th grade, I decided to just be friends with Jay. In the years I knew him, here are some of the things that he did. 1. Randomly would collapse on the floor in the library and crawl under desks. This was senior year, not 5th grade. 2. Spilled gravy all over his hands, then starting rubbing them together and then rubbing his head. 3rd, saying he heard the teacher was dance with Michael Jackson. 4. Got suspended for a week for number 3, then came back and told me he was back from his vacation. 5. Run down the hallway every day screaming random things about Zeus. 6. Started shaking a lamppost outside the school one day while letting out a Tarzan yell. 7. Would scream grandma's here every time this old lady was the substitute librarian in our school library. 8. Got on the school computers in the library and would turn up the volume playing random soundboards of Mr. Rogers and Peter Griffin. 9. Ate an entire crayfish in one bite. 10. Threw his books against the wall one day to fight the Sith Lord. Last time I saw him was at graduation, where we wished each other luck. That was 8 years ago. I wonder how he's doing. Story 39. Coworker. Worked with him for 4 years, no real conversations besides work talk. Can you do this for me? And so on, all the way through 4 years. He's a pastor, but works here at a warehouse. First real conversation after 4 years was this. Keep in mind, we've sat next to each other for 6 hours at this point in a small office. First personal question after 4 years was, have you ever seen 101 Dalmatians me? Yeah, I guess, when I was a kid. Okay. Also, he coughs every 15th second and has a snotty nose, but he has never had his doctor look at it. People say he has had this insane cough for 7 to 8 years. Story 40. I have 2 people tied for first place. 1. Never having had a full conversation with me before. Walks up, says, "Hey, Dracoadamantis, want to see something cool?" Then hit himself. 2. On multiple occasions, came into school high as a kite, wearing a full 3-piece suit, carrying a briefcase filled to the brim with Pop-Tarts, which he ate the entirety of throughout the day. Story 41. Had a dude who do substances. Turned out he would be the guy to be our best wrestler. Also ran headfirst into a wall as fast as he could. Lucky he didn't die. Story 42. I once had a crazy chick in my art class. She sat across from me and I'd catch her starting at me from time to time. So naturally, I'd look up to see if she was staring at me more often. I guess she saw this as some connection we had between us or something, because one day she went way too far. I look up and she's not in her seat. Cue this feeling that someone is behind me. I go to glance behind me and her face is right by my left ear. The following immediately transpires. Me. Eyes widen in surprise. "What the duck?" Her. Giggles under her breath, then whispers, "You're mine now, and this will mark you as mine." Whispers. Oh no. Story 43. In high school, at the lunch table I always sat at with my close friends. A guy with long, straightened black hair none of us had ever met sat next to the 4 of us, not saying a word of the entire lunch period. He looks kinda goth and is drawing something feverishly. I say hello, but he doesn't hear me, and eventually I peer over to see he's drawing a man holding an axe dripping with blood. Later, I open my bag of Famous Amos cookies and share with the whole table. Taking advice from Dane Cook, I set one in front of him. "Hey man, here's a cookie if you want." No response. He doesn't even look up. I figured he didn't hear me. The rest of the table is holding back laughter while watching me as I take one finger and gingerly slide it closer toward him. Nothing. Eventually, my friend looks over and noticed it's gone. Leans over to me and whispers, "He took the cookie." We were all crying to keep from laughing. I eventually got to know him a little better. He seemed like a pretty decent guy. There was also another guy in college, also someone that sat next to me at lunch I had never met before. I was having a bad day and wanted to be away from people, so I found an empty table and sat down, but 2 people that creeped me out proceeded to sit next to me. First, a girl that got my number off the internet and sent me texts from a number I didn't recognize about it being cold outside and wanting hugs, before ever saying who it was. She continued to flirt at me and touch me for the next year or 2. Most times I ran into her, despite me obviously not being interested. But this other guy that sat next to me, Caleb, didn't say a word the entire time. When I left, he followed me up to my dorm room, and as I was about to say, "See you later," he threw his arms around me and hugged me. For the rest of that year, and then some, anytime I was at the dining commons, Caleb would stalk me or one of my friends. He might be all the way at the other end of the dining hall, like 200 feet away in a crowded room, doing this peering gopher move and craning his neck, looking around the room for me, waiting till I got up to take my tray to the little conveyor belt in the wall. When I turned around, he would be standing right there, lunge at me, and throw his arms around me to give me a really uncomfortable hug. He would ask, "How you doing?" in a monotone voice. I'd be like, "I'm okay, I really gotta go though." He did this to me and 2 of my friends a lot. Sometimes he would just sit down next to us eating like 10 cookies for dinner, but he would hardly ever say a word in person. Weird thing is, he would write so eloquently on Facebook, albeit about scathing Calvinist dogma. His fundamentalist cronies would chime in online and sound condemning or spiteful. Ever since then, I thought that all Calvinists lack social skills. Story 44. Weirdest classmate. She was a college friend who I thought I knew well. She seemed totally normal until she invited me over to her parents' house one summer. We were going out to a couple of local bars and spending the day together. She had set up the day. She invited me in and stressed that we would only be hanging out in the living room. No want to see my room, no want to meet my parents. We were only supposed to stay in the living room. And since she offered for me to sleep over, I was only to stay in this room and would be sleeping on the couch. It was weird, I thought, because she's the one that had invited me over and now seems so uncomfortable with the idea. When I asked for a quick snack, she didn't have anything. How about a glass of water? She said that she didn't have a glass to put it in. When I asked to go to the bathroom, she had to walk me to it. I could hear that there were other people in the house, but there was no offer for me to meet her family. Shortly afterwards, we went out to some local bars. A bunch of hours later, we came back to her house. By then, I thought maybe he weirdest was in my head. Nope. When I went to go to sleep on the couch, she asked me if I had my period. It was an odd question as she put a dirty-looking sheet over the couch. I told her that I didn't. She was so thankful because if I bled through to the couch, her mother would be devastated that her vintage couch was ruined. Vintage couch? I thought the couch looked like it had been taken out of a dumpster. When my friend went to sleep in her bedroom upstairs, leaving me in this dark house with other people obviously in it, I was totally creeped out, but I couldn't help needing to know what the hell was going on. I crept over to a closed door across from the living room and tried to open a door. The door barely budged. I peeked through and it was obviously that there was dusty old stuff, board games, bicycles, furniture, newspapers, toys, a big wheel, piled all the way to the ceiling. My guess is that the rest of the house looked exactly like that. I tried to sleep, but I was creeped out sleeping in a hoarder house with presumably the entire family who wouldn't meet me. As soon as she walked downstairs in the morning, I told her that I had to get going. She proceeded to check the sheets to make sure that I hadn't bled through them. I almost ran out the door. We weren't very close after that. Story 45, we had a position in our company that was always difficult to fill. The only candidate with any promise was this 24-year-old woman who had no job experience prior to 22. I thought this was weird since I'd been working since I was 14 years old. The job was primarily customer service, and upon interviewing her, we determined she was the best candidate because she was so personable. Within the first couple of months, I learned that she was from Oklahoma. She was married and was living out of state because her husband's family was from here. All normal things, but sometimes she would say weird stuff like, when I asked if she was going to the company Christmas party, she would say things like, "Only if my husband thinks it's okay." Her car broke down, and I said, "I can pick her up on the way to work." "No, my husband doesn't like me being with men he doesn't know." Later on, I found out she was raised in a very conservative Christian community where women were not allowed to speak in the presence of a man. Story 46. There was a guy in my small group of friends who was really into anime when we were kids. He was always drawing crafty sketches of anime girls he liked. When we started playing video games online, he would always play as a female character, which I found to be a little strange. Then in high school, he started becoming weirder exponentially. He got really into My Little Pony and furries. He had MLP stickers and carried a tablet with a furry drawing as the background. The weirdest thing wasn't that he was into this stuff, but that he didn't make any attempt to hide it at a school where he was already made fun of all the time. He changed his Xbox Live gamertag to something involving Icon. Stopped being friends with him one day when he called my car a piece of junk and I called him out on all his weird behavior. He still hasn't unblocked me, and I sometimes regret it a little because he's the only one I know IRL who's into Zelda, so I have no one to talk about it with. Story 47. I had a coworker, Mike, who was a little out there. When I was a new employee, I didn't see it, but as time went on, it became evident. Mike was about 55, a former addict, and a former boxer. Mike lived in a house with 4 other guys renting rooms. Mike was about 5'3" and had what I called short man syndrome. He would walk around like a bulldog at a slightly faster pace than everyone else. Mike was a hardcore Christian. Sometimes when we drove together, he would slam on his brakes in the middle of the road, any road, freeway, highway, side street, and point to the clouds. He would say that God is in the clouds. He can tell because there's a cross in the sky. Mike would do something without asking his coworker if it was okay, and when he found out it wasn't, would say, "I just want to be on the same page, and continue doing the same thing he was doing." He would say this 40 times a shift. "Mike, we were all on the same page. You had your own page altogether." Mike threatened to quit 3 times, and the last time, once before I became an employee, once where he threw paper everywhere and left in a flurry of rage, and the last where he became irate because he was told he needed to keep the blinds open and didn't want to. Where did we work? In a shelter for the homeless. Edit. One time, Mike didn't show up for his shift. Start time, 1 a.m. I left others manning the station and drove to his home. I knocked on the door several times, and after 2 minutes, the door rips open with Mike standing there in his underwear. He's talking a mile a minute. Says he needs to shower really quick. Mike asked me to wait and drive him to work so he didn't use his gas in his car. I obliged and sat down to wait. His section of living space is littered with holy pictures, candles, and doilies reminiscent of my grandma's home. I'm staring off into space mentally, telling him to hurry. Mike bursts out of the shower, naked in the hallway, seemingly forgetting I was there. He screams. I scream. He runs into his bedroom and emerges 2 minutes later, still talking a mile a minute. We hurry to work. I drop him off, and just before I drive away, I look him dead in the eyes and say, "I didn't know you had a tattoo there." He starts yelling something as I drive away, laughing. Story 48. Worked with this guy who was extremely creepy. Everything he said and did was off-putting. He would claim to be smarter than everyone and lie about everything, and he said he was a professor at a local college, but we checked and he wasn't. He would claim other things like he was FBI or some security clearance guy, which we all knew he wasn't. He took it up a notch and told me he dreams about hit me. When he finally got fired because no one liked him and he was just creepy, he became an author. I ended up downloading one of his books from Amazon for free, and it was essentially my life story he used for his female character. Along with her description, it was me he described. He's one of those people you meet and you are just nice to them for fear of him being a serial killer. Glad to be rid of him. Story 49. Worked at McDonald's when I was 17 and this seemingly harmless little weedy guy made an effort to talk to me on my first day. Would be totally sweet if he didn't follow it up by adding me on Facebook so he could ask me about my habits and tell me how he liked playing with the holes. He asked me out and I politely declined. Turns out he had done the exact same to every other girl there, and continued to do so to every other girl who joined. Surprisingly, sometimes his technique worked. Story 50. I'm a science teacher, and in my teacher prep program, we had this woman, can't seem to remember her name, who argued that we shouldn't teach students to ask questions because when they get into real-world labs, they'll just be expected to follow the instructions of their supervisors and to not question it. I also had a classmate in my Iceland study abroad whose mere presence gave me anxiety. She held up a strawberry with 2 points on the end instead of 1 and said, "This is the problem with GMOs." Story 51. Wasn't a classmate, but 2 years younger, who was obsessed with Doctor Who to the point he had an imaginary sonic screwdriver, or whatever it was. One day, a kid in school took this imaginary item off him, and he went insane about it. Told the teachers who made the kid give it back. This didn't end there, though. One day, he lost it himself and told the school that if it wasn't found, he would have a dirty protest. He'd crap all over the toilets, smearing his crap in all the toilet stalls, taps, and walls. Left a trail from the boys' toilets on 2nd floor down to the toilets on 1st floor. His mom finally got called in over this kid's mental health, and she said it was doing him no harm, having an imaginary item, and if we wasn't willing to support him with it, then she would get the local counselors in and take it national. Thing was, he was already in the special needs group and got extra help attention. Lucky me got paired with him on a school trip to France, as I typically had the patience to deal with him. But on this trip, he actually managed to buy an actual 100% real, obviously, sonic screwdriver. And he proceeded to hit me with it and poke me nonstop with the invisible one, his finger, and I lost it and threw his newly bought one in a river in Normandy. Didn't speak to me for the rest of the trip and after when we got back to school. Edit. I still see him and have kept in contact with him over social media. He works in a game workstation, and think comic book store. He's grown out of his make-believe sonic screwdriver and laughs about it now, but he's still not a full penny, which he says about himself. I also bought him a sonic screwdriver about 5 years later when I found out he worked near me. Always felt bad about throwing it in a river, but one can only take being hit with it daily for 10 days before they have enough. Story 52. Bob, he sat across from me and often turned his chair around so he could lean on the back while typing. One day his pants slipped down a bit and I noticed he was wearing panties. You know what kind. Okay, no biggie. We all have our kinks and we're all adults here. I shrugged and went on with work. Not long afterward, he asked out one of the women at work and apparently their first couple of dates went okay. Then he started doing things like blowing her a kiss across the office. She was visibly embarrassed. So she asked him to stop. He didn't, so she asked me to ask him to stop. E was the manager. I got him aside one day and said, "Hey man, didn't you learn in high school that PDAES, public displays of affection, aren't cool?" Barb's a little upset with the situation, and believe me, I have better things to do at work than talk about this kind of stuff. So knock it off, okay? Little did I know she had broken up with him the night before. He gets angry, calls me a few names, and stalks off. I just let it go. A week or so later, I'm in early around 6 a.m., and I'm walking down a deserted hall when Bob walks out from an empty office. I later learned he had been sleeping there, and gets in my face, saying, "I know you're talking about me behind my back." Out of pure reaction, I stiff-armed him and said, "I don't talk about you at all, unless your work is late or sloppy. Now, go away." A few nights later, I'm covering the night shift, and one of the back shop guys comes into my office and says, "Hey, Bob's outside in the parking lot." So? Well, he's got a baseball bat, and he says he's gonna duck you up. Okay, let's call the cops and see what they think of all this. So a cop arrives, disarms Bob, and then says I have to come outside and trespass him officially. I walk out and give the little speech. He's fired, he's not wanted around here, and to not come back. He sits there staring straight ahead the whole time. The cop says he can either drive off or be arrested. He finally turns the key and drives off. A few weeks later, Barb tells me he had showed up at her place, trying to win her back by shouting her name over and over at 2 a.m., much to her neighbor's displeasure. That got him a cooling off night in jail, and he vanished after that. Story 53, ex-roommate. There's a guy in English lit class that everyone hates because he argues every point with everyone, even the prof. He's super tall with curly black hair. He asks so many stupid questions. Me, in a completely different faculty. Sounds like a guy I know named Oliver. He's in my minor. Ex-roommate and I stare at each other. Realize we are talking about the same dude. Duck, Oliver was annoying. Story 54. I worked with this lady, I guess I'll call her Sue, in my current housekeeping job when I first got hired. She seemed nice enough, but I noticed she was a little off. If we were cleaning a room together, she was cheery. But if we were separated, I was the scum of the earth to her. I just decided to ignore her most of the time, and I ended up excelling extremely well at the job while she started lagging behind. I was asked to help her with her rooms one day, as I had finished mine, and she barked orders at me to help her with making the beds. As I was fluffing out a sheet, she was distracted, and instead of catching it, it hit her in the face. I apologized. She laughed it off. I thought nothing of it. I come in the next day with her in tears, explaining to our supervisor that I'm horribly violent, and I beat her whenever I'm asked to do her rooms. She crocodile tears this to everyone on staff in the hotel with the intention of turning them against me. And now I'm in tears, having an anxiety attack. Didn't want to lose my job, needed money. I did my work for the day and went home, fully expecting to be fired. But when I got back the next day, I get told they're permanently separating us to never work again together. Everyone does their own rooms. No problemo. So again, I'm kicking ass while she's lagging behind and she starts sucking up to me like we're best buds. Don't I beat you or something? Buzz off. What? I never said that. Bye, Sue. And I put her on full ignore for the rest of her time there. To end this, everybody figured out she was a bloody liar, a lousy housekeeper. She would take an hour for each room. It's 20 to 30 minutes per room max unless it was utterly destroyed. And once she was outed, she conveniently moved away to be closer to her horses. Everyone who believed her stories without even consulting me were eventually fired too. No idea if it was connected, but it felt like it was. Anyways, ever since she left those few years ago, I kept getting promotion after promotion, and now I'm head housekeeper. Felt good to see her weird get done and gone. So, not overly weird, but still, why fabricate crap for no reason? I found out after she left there were a ton more rumors she made about me, possessed, ECT, but I guess people wisened up to her before long.